She took a bullet for the billionaire CEO who once fired her. I'd rather die than watch you destroy them the way your grandmother tried to destroy you. The words hung in the air between them as Nora Ellis stood firmly between Rowan Blake and the door, her eyes never leaving the gun in his trembling hand. Get out of my way, Nora. This isn't your fight. Rowan's voice cracked with emotion, the weight of 15 years of manipulation finally breaking him. These children are my family now, Nora replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. And I won't let you throw away everything we've built because of Clara's final game. Have you ever wondered what could drive someone to step in front of a bullet for a person who once destroyed their career? What kind of connection could be powerful enough to risk everything? The security alarm blared in the background. In moments, the Blake Industries security team would burst through those doors. Nora could see the desperation in Rowan's eyes, the same eyes his children had inherited. The same eyes that had begun to look at her with trust and love over the past 6 months. She controlled everything, Rowan whispered, his finger tightening on the trigger. My whole life. My children. And now, from beyond the grave, she's still pulling the strings. Then break them, Nora pleaded. Not like this. Not in a way that will haunt your children forever. For a moment, something shifted in Rowan's expression. Then, the doors burst open behind him. The gunshot echoed through the executive suite of Blake Industries, and Nora Ellis, who had walked away from Clara Wynn 15 years ago, fell to the floor, having taken a bullet for the son of the woman who had once destroyed her career. But to understand why a successful architect from Portland would sacrifice her life for a family that wasn't hers, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to the day Nora received a letter that would change everything. If you've ever had your life turned upside down by a single unexpected moment, you already understand what Nora felt that day. The question is, would you have made the same choices she did? 6 months earlier, Nora stood on the sidewalk outside the gleaming glass headquarters of Blake Industries, feeling the weight of 15 years pressing down on her shoulders. The building looked different now, more modern, less austere, but the knot in her stomach was painfully familiar. She hadn't planned to return to Manhattan. Her life in Portland was carefully constructed. Her small but successful architectural firm, her modest craftsman home with its garden that bloomed even in winter, her quiet evenings with books and wine, a life built deliberately without ghosts. But then the letter arrived. Ms. Ellis, your presence is requested at the reading of Clara Wynn's last will and testament. Clara Wynn. The name still caused her breath to catch, even after all this time. The brilliant, ruthless woman who had mentored Nora, believed in her, and ultimately driven her away. The woman whose vision had transformed a failing family business into a global empire. The woman who had died alone in her penthouse overlooking Central Park with no family to mourn her. No family except, perhaps, Nora. We all have that one person from our past who still has the power to disrupt our carefully constructed lives. For some, it's an ex-lover. For others, a former friend. For Nora, it was Clara Wynn, the woman who had shaped her career and then shattered it. What would you do if that person reached out to you from beyond the grave? The security guard checked her ID, his eyes widening slightly at her name. Ms. Ellis? They're expecting you on the 50th floor. The elevator rose smoothly, each floor marking another memory. Nora had spent 5 years in this building, rising from intern to Clara's right hand. 5 years learning from the most formidable businesswoman in New York. 5 years before the betrayal that sent her fleeing across the country, vowing never to return. The doors opened to reveal a reception area she barely recognized. Gone were the austere, minimalist furnishings Clara had preferred, replaced with warm woods and living plants. A young woman rose from behind the desk. Ms. Ellis, I'm Skylar Quinn, Mr. Blake's executive assistant. They're waiting for you in the conference room. Mr. Blake? Nora followed Skylar down the hallway, confusion mounting. Clara had no children, no siblings. The Wynn family line had ended with her, or so Nora had believed. The conference room doors opened to reveal a gathering of solemn-faced executives seated around a massive table. At its head stood a man Nora had never seen before, tall, with Clara's distinctive gray eyes and commanding presence. He looked to be in his early 30s, with dark hair and a carefully trimmed beard. "Ms. Ellis," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. I'm Rowan Blake." Nora's world tilted. "Blake? I don't understand. Clara never mentioned a son?" His smile held no warmth. "No, she wouldn't have. Please, sit down. All will be explained." What other secrets had Clara kept hidden all these years? And why had she summoned Nora now, after 15 years of silence? The reading of the will proceeded with clinical efficiency. Clara had left specific bequests to various charities and longtime employees. The bulk of her estate, including controlling interest in Blake Industries, went to Rowan Blake, her son, whose existence had been kept secret from all but a handful of trusted advisors. And then came the surprise. To Nora Ellis, the lawyer read, "I leave my personal residence at 1120 Fifth Avenue, along with its contents, and the responsibility I once offered her. She will understand." Murmurs rippled through the room. Nora sat frozen, the words echoing in her mind. The responsibility I once offered her. 15 years ago, Clara had offered Nora the chance to become her successor, to carry the Wynn legacy forward. Nora had refused and walked away. Now Clara was giving her something else entirely. If you've ever had responsibility thrust upon you without warning, you know the weight Nora felt in that moment. The sudden shift from freedom to obligation. The question that haunts us all. Do we accept the burden, or do we walk away? After the meeting, Rowan Blake approached her. "We need to talk privately," he said, his voice low, "about what my mother left you." In Clara's former office, now Rowan's, Nora stood at the window looking out over the city she'd abandoned. "I don't want the apartment," she said without turning. "I have a life in Portland." "This isn't about the apartment." Rowan's reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. "It's about what else she left you." Nora turned. "What responsibility? I left Blake Industries 15 years ago. I have no place here now." Rowan's expression hardened. "Not Blake Industries, my children." The world seemed to stop. "Your children?" "Quadruplets, 14 years old." His voice was flat, emotionless. "My mother raised them after their mother died in childbirth. I was 19 in college. Clara decided I wasn't ready for fatherhood. She took them and erased all public record of their existence." Nora sank into a chair, stunned. Clara raised 4 children? Alone? With help, obviously. Nannies, tutors. But yes, she was their guardian. Rowan paced the office. "I was allowed supervised visits twice a year. She controlled everything. Their education, their activities, their future. She was grooming them to run Blake Industries someday. And now she's left them to me?" Nora whispered. "That's impossible. I know nothing about raising children." "Neither do I," Rowan said bitterly. "That was her point, I think. Her final lesson for both of us. Sometimes the most life-changing moments come disguised as impossible situations." Nora was facing 4 teenagers she'd never met, a responsibility she never asked for, and a past she'd tried to forget. What would you do in her position? "You could contest the will," Nora began. "I already have." Rowan cut her off. "The courts won't overturn it. Clara's lawyers made sure of that." He stopped pacing and faced her. "The children remain at her residence where you are now the legal owner. You have been named their guardian until they turn 18. I retain visitation rights and certain decision-making powers regarding their future at Blake Industries." Nora stood, anger rising. "This is insane. I can't uproot my life to raise 4 teenagers I've never met." "Then we have something in common," Rowan said coldly. "Because neither can I. My mother made sure of that." "Why me? Why would she do this?" Rowan's laugh was harsh. "Because you were the daughter she chose, the one who walked away. This is her revenge on both of us. Me for disappointing her, you for abandoning her." Nora shook her head. "I can't do this." "You have 24 hours to meet them before the terms of the will become public," Rowan said. "After that, the media circus begins. Clara Wynn's secret grandchildren and the woman she chose over her own son to raise them." He handed her a key card. "The elevator code is 1120, same as the address. The children are expecting you." The penthouse at 1120 Fifth Avenue occupied the top 2 floors of a pre-war building with views of Central Park. Nora had been there once before, for a rare dinner invitation from Clara. She remembered cold marble, priceless art, and uncomfortable silence. The elevator opened directly into a foyer that was nothing like she remembered. Children's artwork hung on the walls. A basketball lay in one corner. The sound of a piano drifted from somewhere inside. A woman in her 60s appeared, her face lined with recent grief. "Ms. Ellis? I'm Mrs. Bennett, the children's caretaker. They're in the library." Nora followed her through the apartment, noting the strange juxtaposition of Clara's austere taste with evidence of children, textbooks stacked on an antique console, a gaming system connected to a television that hadn't existed during her previous visit, a sweatshirt draped over a museum-quality chair. The library had been transformed. The floor-to-ceiling bookshelves remained, but interspersed with the leather-bound classics were young adult novels and science textbooks. A large table dominated the center of the room, where 4 teenagers sat in various poses of adolescent wariness. "Children," Mrs. Bennett said gently. "This is Ms. Ellis." 4 pairs of eyes, all with the distinctive Wynn gray, turned to assess her. 2 boys, 2 girls, their faces showing varying degrees of Clara's features mingled with someone else's. Their mothers, Nora presumed. "I'm Nora," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I knew your grandmother." "We know who you are," said one of the boys, his tone challenging. "You're the one who left." First impressions matter, especially with teenagers. Which of these 4 would you connect with first? The defiant boy, the quiet girl, the watchful one in the corner? Each face held a story waiting to be discovered. Nora blinked. "You know about me?" One of the girls nodded. "Grandmother had a file. She showed us when we turned 13. Said we should understand the importance of loyalty." Of course, Clara would have used her as a cautionary tale. "I see. I'm Avery," said the girl who had spoken. "That's my sister Riley." She pointed to the quieter girl who hadn't looked up from her book. "And our brothers Jordan and Casey." "The heir and the spare, ×2, said the boy who had first spoken. "Casey," Nora guessed from his rebellious posture. "Grandmother's perfect succession plan." "Casey, don't," Avery warned. "Why not? She's not staying. No one stays." Casey stood abruptly. "I have homework." He brushed past Nora and out of the room. Jordan, the other boy, offered an apologetic smile. "Sorry. He took grandmother's death the hardest." "We all know why you're here," Avery continued, her composure remarkable for a 14-year-old. "Grandmother left us to you in her will, but we don't need a guardian. We've been raising ourselves for years." "Avery," Mrs. Bennett chided gently. "It's true," Avery insisted. "Grandmother was busy. We had schedules, tutors, expectations. We managed." Nora took a seat at the table, trying to process the situation. 4 children, raised by Clara Wynn, a woman who had treated her own corporation with more warmth than most people treated their families. What kind of childhood had that been? We all wear masks to protect ourselves from pain. These children had perfected theirs under Clara's watchful eye. The question wasn't whether they needed Nora, it was whether they would ever let her see behind those carefully constructed facades. "I understand this is difficult," Nora said carefully. "I didn't know about any of you until today. I haven't seen your grandmother in 15 years. Why did you leave?" This came from Riley, who had finally looked up from her book. Her voice was softer than her sister's, but no less intense. Nora hesitated. How much should she tell these children about their grandmother, about the woman who had mentored her, then betrayed her trust in the most fundamental way? "Your grandmother and I had different values," she said finally. "Different visions for the future." "You mean you didn't have what it takes?" Avery challenged. "Grandmother said you were brilliant but soft, that you chose a small life over a significant one." The words stung, even after all these years. "Is that what you think a significant life is? Running Blake Industries?" "It's our legacy," Jordan said quietly. "Our responsibility." Nora looked at these 4 children, so young, yet already burdened with expectations that would crush most adults. She thought of Clara, brilliant and driven, but ultimately alone despite her empire. Was this what she wanted for her grandchildren? Legacy is what you choose to make it, Nora said, not what someone else decides for you. Riley's eyes widened slightly, as if this concept had never occurred to her. Jordan looked thoughtful. Avery's expression remained skeptical. What does legacy mean to you? Is it what you build, what you own, what you achieve? Or is it something more profound, the lives you touch, the people you help become their best selves? Mrs. Bennett, Nora said, could you give us a few minutes? When the caretaker had left, Nora leaned forward. I need to be honest with you. I don't know how to be a guardian to 4 teenagers. I live across the country. I have a business there, a life I've built. This situation is unexpected. Then leave, Avery said bluntly. We'll be fine. That's not how this works, Nora replied. Your grandmother made me responsible for you, whether I like it or not. Whether you like it or not, we're connected now. Why you? Jordan asked. Why not our father? Nora hesitated. I think that's a question for him. He doesn't want us, Riley said matter-of-factly. He never has. You don't know that, Jordan argued. Twice a year visits, Jordan, for our entire lives. Avery's voice was bitter. Grandmother was right about him. He's weak. Nora felt a surge of protectiveness. These children deserved better than to be pawns in whatever game Clara had been playing. I think there's more to that story than you know, she said carefully. Your father was very young when you were born, and your grandmother, she could be controlling. She wanted what was best for us, Avery insisted. From her perspective, yes. Nora chose her words carefully. But sometimes what seems best to one person isn't what's best for everyone. A silence fell over the room. Finally, Riley spoke again. Are you going to make us move to Portland? The question caught Nora off guard. She hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know yet. This is all very new to me too. We have school here, Jordan pointed out. Friends, activities. And Blake Industries, Avery added. Our future. Nora studied these 4 children, so young yet already shaped by Clara's vision. What would happen to them now? What would happen to her own carefully constructed life? Sometimes the most important decisions aren't about what we want, but about what others need. Nora was facing a choice that would alter not just her life, but the lives of 4 teenagers who had already experienced too much loss. What would you sacrifice for children who weren't yours? I need some time to figure this out, she said honestly, but I promise you this. Whatever decisions are made, they'll be made with your best interests at heart. Not Blake Industries, not your grandmother's legacy, yours. The skepticism on their faces was clear, but Nora saw something else too. A flicker of hope, perhaps. Or simply curiosity about this woman who had walked away from what they had been raised to value above all else. I'll be staying in the city for a few days, she continued. We can use that time to get to know each other better. Where will you sleep? Riley asked practically. I don't know. A hotel, I suppose. There's a guest suite on this floor, Jordan offered. No one ever uses it? Nora nodded, touched by the small gesture. Thank you. That would be helpful. As she left the library, she heard Avery whisper to her siblings. She won't last a week. Nora couldn't blame them for their doubt. She wasn't sure she would last either. Small gestures often reveal more than grand declarations. Jordan's offer of the guest suite, was it merely politeness or the first tentative step toward connection? In families broken by secrets, healing begins with these tiny moments of reaching out. The guest suite was impersonal but luxurious, like an expensive hotel room. Nora sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, trying to find the words to explain the situation to her business partner in Portland. Let me get this straight, Ava Sinclair said when she'd finished. Clara Wynne, the woman who nearly destroyed you 15 years ago, has left you her apartment and guardianship of 4 teenagers you've never met? That's the short version, yes. And these are her grandchildren? I thought she didn't have family. So did everyone else, Nora sighed. It's complicated, Ava. The whole situation is impossible. So walk away. Contest the will. You don't owe Clara Wynne anything. It's not about her. It's about the children. Nora moved to the window, looking out at the park below. You should see them, Ava. They're brilliant, poised, but so programmed. Clara was raising them to take over Blake Industries like little corporate soldiers. Not your problem, Nora. But it is now. That's the thing. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. I keep thinking about what would have happened to me if someone hadn't taken a chance on me when I was their age. Ava was silent for a moment. You're considering this. Actually considering uprooting your life for 4 strange teenagers. They're not strange, they're just lost, even if they don't know it yet. What about the firm? Our clients? The Westridge project is at a critical stage. I know, I'm not making any decisions yet. I just need a few days to figure this out. We all have that moment when we must choose between what's comfortable and what's right, between the life we've planned and the life that's calling to us. Nora stood at that crossroads now, torn between the security of Portland and the uncertain path before her. After hanging up, Nora wandered through the apartment, trying to reconcile the cold, austere space she remembered with this home where children had been raised. In Clara's study, untouched since her death, according to Mrs. Bennet, Nora found herself drawn to the desk. The top drawer contained what she expected: expensive pens, notepads, business cards. The second drawer held files, neatly labeled. The third was locked. On impulse, Nora tried the key Clara had left her, the one to a safe deposit box she hadn't yet visited. To her surprise, it fit. Inside lay a single file labeled Nora. With trembling hands, she opened it. Newspaper clippings about her small firm in Portland. Photos taken from a distance. Nora at a coffee shop, at a construction site, walking her dog. And letters, dozens of them, written in Clara's precise hand, never sent. Nora, I was wrong. Nora, I should have told you the truth. Nora, I need your help. The most recent was dated just weeks before Clara's death. Nora, I am dying. The doctors give me 6 months at most. I have made many mistakes in my life, but none greater than losing you. Not because of what you could have done for Blake Industries, but because of what you might have done for my grandchildren. They need someone who sees them as more than extensions of the Wynne legacy. Someone who understands that success without meaning is no success at all. A lesson I learned too late. I have no right to ask anything of you after what happened between us. But these children deserve better than what Rowan or I can give them. They deserve someone who will show them there are many ways to live a significant life. If you are reading this, I am gone, and you have accepted my final request. Or perhaps you have come simply to refuse it in person. Either way, you are here, which is more than I deserve. The safe deposit box contains everything you need to know about the children, their medical records, their interests, their dreams that they hide from me, but that my staff reports dutifully. Use this information wisely. I am not asking for forgiveness, Nora. I am asking for mercy, not for myself, but for 4 children who had no choice in the legacy they were born to carry. Clara, how many of us get to hear the truth from those who've wronged us? Clara's unsent letters revealed a side of her Nora had never seen. Vulnerable, regretful, human. The question wasn't whether Clara deserved forgiveness, but whether these children deserved the chance Nora could give them. Nora set the letter down, her vision blurred with unexpected tears. The Clara she had known, cold, calculating, ruthless in pursuit of her goals, seemed at odds with the woman who had written these words. Had she changed in her final years? Or had this side of her always existed, buried beneath the corporate armor she wore so effectively? A soft knock at the door startled her. She quickly returned the file to the drawer as Riley entered, a mug in her hand. Mrs. Bennet thought you might like some tea, the girl said, setting the mug on a coaster. Her eyes darted to the desk drawer. Were you looking at grandmother's private things? Just trying to understand the situation better, Nora admitted. No point lying to these perceptive children. Riley nodded, unsurprised. She kept files on everyone. It was how she maintained control. The matter-of-fact way she said this broke Nora's heart a little. Is that how you see relationships? As exercises in control? Riley considered this, her gray eyes thoughtful. Isn't that what they are? People either control or are controlled. No, Nora said gently. That's not how healthy relationships work. How do they work then? The genuine curiosity in the girl's voice made Nora realize how much these children had missed, raised in Clara's rarefied, transactional world. They're based on mutual respect, on caring about another person's happiness as much as your own, on trust. Riley absorbed this. Grandmother said trust was a luxury for people who couldn't afford good lawyers. Despite everything, Nora laughed. That sounds like her. A ghost of a smile touched Riley's lips. She wasn't always cold, you know. Sometimes when it was just us, she would tell stories about when she was young. About how she built Blake Industries from nothing after her father nearly bankrupted it. She was remarkable, Nora acknowledged. Brilliant, determined, visionary. But you still left. Yes? Why? The question was simple, direct. So like Clara. Sometimes the most profound connections begin with the simplest questions. Riley's why wasn't just about Nora's past. It was about her own future. About whether there were other ways to live beyond the path Clara had laid out for her. Nora considered how to answer. These children deserve the truth, but they also deserve to preserve their memories of the grandmother who had raised them. Your grandmother and I had a fundamental disagreement about ethics, she said carefully. About where the line should be drawn in business. She believed the end justified the means. I didn't. The Westlake Project, Riley said, surprising Nora. You know about that? Riley nodded. It's in the file. Grandmother said it was her greatest miscalculation. Underestimating your principles. The Westlake Project. 15 years later, the memory still made Nora's stomach clench. The discovery that Clara had knowingly used substandard materials in a major development to increase profits. Nora's threat to report it. Clara's counter-threat to destroy her career if she did. The compromise. Nora's silence in exchange for Clara fixing the problems and her own resignation from Blake Industries. She respected you for it, Riley continued, even though she said you were wrong. Did she fix the problems with the building? Yes, at great expense. She said it was the price of losing you. Nora absorbed this, wondering how much else she had misunderstood about her former mentor. Riley, she asked carefully, are you happy? The girl seemed startled by the question. Happy? Yes, in your life, with your siblings, your school, your activities. Riley considered this with the same serious attention she might give a complex math problem. I don't know, she finally admitted. I've never really thought about it. We have responsibilities, expectations. Happiness seems irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, Nora said softly. It's essential. When was the last time you asked yourself if you were truly happy? Not successful, not accomplished, not admired, but genuinely happy. Riley had never even considered the question. How many of us live our lives the same way, pursuing goals without asking if they bring us joy? Riley looked at her with those penetrating gray eyes. Were you happy? After you left? Not at first, Nora admitted. I was angry, hurt, lost. But eventually, yes. I built a life that reflected my values, found work that was meaningful to me. Without the resources of Blake Industries, without grandmother's connections, it was harder, Nora acknowledged, but also more satisfying because of that. Riley nodded, absorbing this. Avery thinks you'll leave, that no one would choose us over their own life. The simple statement revealed so much about what these children believed about themselves, about their worth beyond the win name. Nora felt a surge of anger toward Clara, and toward Rowan, who had allowed his children to grow up feeling unwanted. Riley, she said gently, whatever happens, it won't be because you and your siblings aren't worth staying for. You are. All of you. The girl's expression didn't change, but something in her posture relaxed slightly. Dinner is at 7, she said, moving toward the door. Formal attire isn't required, but Casey will complain if you wear jeans. After she left, Nora sat for a long time, thinking about Clara's letter, about Riley's revelations, about 4 children raised to value achievement over happiness, about the life she had built in Portland, satisfying but solitary, about second chances and responsibilities and the strange turns life could take. She had no answers yet, but for the first time since arriving at the penthouse, she felt something unexpected. Possibility. The most important decisions rarely announce themselves as such. They creep up on us in quiet moments of clarity when we suddenly see the path forward. For Nora, that moment came not in a boardroom or courtroom, but in a conversation with a 14-year-old girl who had never considered her own happiness. Dinner was a formal affair despite Riley's assurance about attire. The dining room table was set with fine china and crystal, Mrs. Bennet serving a meal that would have impressed at any high-end restaurant. The children sat with perfect posture, napkins in laps, making polite conversation about their day. It was like watching a performance, one they had clearly been rehearsing their entire lives. Jordan has a cello recital next weekend, Avery informed Nora. He's first chair in the youth symphony. That's impressive, Nora said, genuinely. How long have you played, Jordan? Since I was 4, he replied. Grandmother believed musical training developed mathematical thinking. Do you enjoy it? Jordan looked surprised by the question. I excel at it, he said, as if that answered everything. Riley is a nationally ranked chess player, Avery continued, clearly the designated spokesperson. And Casey is captain of the debate team. And you? Nora asked Avery directly. What are your interests? I'm being groomed for management, she replied without hesitation. I intern at Blake Industries 3 afternoons a week. Grandmother said I have the strongest leadership potential. Nora noted how the other 3 siblings reacted to this. Jordan with acceptance, Riley with indifference, Casey with a flash of resentment quickly suppressed. And what do you want to do? Nora pressed. If you could choose anything? Avery stared at her as if she'd asked what color the sky would be if gravity reversed. I am choosing. Blake Industries is my future. All of our futures, Casey muttered. Casey has been difficult since grandmother died, Avery said, as if her brother weren't sitting right there. He's questioning everything she planned for us. Maybe because she's dead and can't punish me anymore, Casey snapped. Casey! Mrs. Bennet looked shocked. Well, it's true, Casey continued, his composure cracking. We're all thinking it. She controlled everything. What we studied, who we spent time with, what we ate, what we wore. And for what? So we could be perfect little Win robots? She wanted what was best for us, Avery insisted. No, she wanted what was best for Blake Industries, Casey countered. There's a difference. How many families are trapped in cycles of expectation and resentment? Casey's outburst wasn't just teenage rebellion. It was the first crack in a carefully constructed facade. The question wasn't whether he was right, but whether anyone would finally listen. Children, Mrs. Bennet interjected. Perhaps this isn't the best conversation for dinner with a guest. Ms. Ellis isn't a guest, Riley pointed out quietly. She owns this apartment now, and she's our guardian. All eyes turned to Nora, who set down her fork carefully. I think this is exactly the conversation we should be having, she said. Casey, you're angry about your grandmother's control. Avery, you've embraced the path she set for you. Jordan and Riley, you fall somewhere in between. All of those feelings are valid. Grandmother knew what she was doing, Avery insisted. Blake Industries needs strong leadership to survive. We're being prepared for that responsibility. But what if that's not what we want? Casey challenged. What if some of us want different lives? Like what? Avery scoffed. What could possibly be more important than our legacy? I don't know, Casey admitted. That's the problem. We've never been allowed to explore anything else. Nora looked at these 4 children. So mature in some ways, so limited in others. What if, she suggested carefully, we use the next few months to explore some possibilities to help each of you figure out what you truly want, not just what's expected of you? Our father wouldn't allow it, Avery said dismissively. He's as committed to the Wynn legacy as grandmother was. Your father, Nora said, is not your guardian. I am. And while I respect the importance of Blake Industries to your family, I believe you deserve the chance to make informed choices about your own futures. The silence that followed was profound. Even Avery seemed at a loss for words. You would let us choose? Jordan asked finally. Even if we chose something other than Blake Industries? I would help you discover what truly matters to you, Nora clarified, whether that's the family business or something entirely different. Grandmother would hate this, Avery muttered. Perhaps, Nora acknowledged. Or perhaps she chose me precisely because she knew I would offer you what she couldn't. Freedom. The idea hung in the air, radical and frightening and exhilarating all at once. Freedom can be terrifying when you've never had it. These four teenagers had lived their entire lives according to Clara's blueprint. Now, Nora was offering them blank canvas instead. Would they have the courage to paint their own pictures? What about our father? Riley asked practically. He has visitation rights, and he's the CEO of Blake Industries now. I'll speak with him, Nora promised, though she had no idea how that conversation would go. But the terms of the will are clear. I have primary decision-making authority regarding your upbringing. So we're trading one dictator for another, Casey said, but without his earlier bitterness. Nora smiled. I prefer to think of it as trading a monarchy for a democracy. Your voices matter in this new arrangement. All of your voices. For the first time since her arrival, she saw genuine hope on their faces, even Avery's, though the girl quickly masked it with skepticism. You're still leaving, though, Avery challenged. Going back to Portland. Nora took a deep breath. Actually, I've been thinking about that. My firm has been considering opening an East Coast office for some time. This might be the perfect opportunity. It wasn't entirely a lie. She and Ava had discussed expansion occasionally, though never seriously. But sitting here, looking at these four children who needed her, who might be the family she'd never allowed herself to have, Nora felt certain this was where she needed to be. You would stay? Riley asked, her usual composure slipping to reveal the vulnerable 14-year-old beneath. I would stay, Nora confirmed. At least until we figure this out together. The relief on their faces was palpable, even Casey's. Only Avery maintained her skeptical expression. Why? She demanded. Why would you uproot your life for four teenagers you just met? It was the question Nora had been asking herself since reading Clara's letter. The answer came to her with surprising clarity. Because someone once took a chance on me when I was lost, she said simply. And because I think your grandmother, in her own complicated way, was trying to give you something she never had, the freedom to define success on your own terms. The most meaningful connections often come from unexpected places. Have you ever had someone believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself? Someone who saw possibilities in you that you couldn't yet see? That's what Nora was offering these children, not just guardianship, but vision. After dinner, Nora called Ava again to outline her tentative plan. As expected, she was skeptical. You're making a life-altering decision based on 2 days with these kids, she pointed out. That's not like you, Nora. You analyze everything to death before changing your coffee order, let alone your address. I know it sounds crazy, she admitted. But Ava, they need me. Not just any guardian. Me, specifically. Clara knew what she was doing when she chose me. The woman manipulated you 15 years ago. What makes you think she's not manipulating you from beyond the grave? Nora thought about the letter, about the regret evident in those carefully written words. Maybe she is, but maybe she also learned something in those 15 years. Maybe she wanted better for her grandchildren than what she had. Ava sighed. And what about our firm? Our clients? Your life here? I'm not abandoning the firm. I'll commute when necessary. Work remotely the rest of the time. We've discussed opening an East Coast office before. Theoretically, maybe. Not like this. Ava, Nora said softly. When my parents died and I had nowhere to go, Professor Winters took me in. He didn't have to. It wasn't convenient. But he did it anyway, and it changed my life. Maybe this is my chance to pay that forward. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. You're really doing this, aren't you? I think I am, at least for now. Then I guess we're opening an East Coast office, Ava said finally. But Nora, be careful. These are Clara Wynn's grandchildren. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Sometimes the most important decisions feel like leaps of faith. Nora was jumping without knowing where she would land. But she knew one thing with certainty. She couldn't walk away from these children. Not now. Not after seeing the hope in their eyes. After hanging up, Nora wandered to the window, looking out at the city lights. Was she making a terrible mistake? Probably. But for the first time in years, she felt truly alive, challenged, needed, purposeful. Tomorrow, she would visit the safe deposit box, learn everything Clara had compiled about her grandchildren. She would meet with Rowan Blake, establish boundaries and expectations. She would begin the process of transferring her life from Portland to New York. But tonight, she simply stood at the window, watching the city that had once been her home, wondering at the strange turns life could take. 15 years ago, she had fled New York, betrayed and brokenhearted. Now she was returning, not to Blake Industries, but to a different kind of legacy. 4 children who needed someone to show them that life offered more possibilities than they had been raised to see. Clara Wynn had given her one final assignment. And despite everything that had happened between them, Nora found herself determined to succeed. The safe deposit box contained exactly what Clara had promised. Detailed files on each child. Medical records, school reports, psychological evaluations, and personal observations from staff members who had been instructed to document everything. Jordan shows remarkable musical aptitude, but lacks the killer instinct necessary for executive leadership. Consider directing him toward R&D or creative divisions. Riley's analytical mind is her greatest asset. Her introversion may limit her effectiveness in public-facing roles. Strategic planning would suit her temperament. Casey's rebellious nature masks a keen intelligence and natural charisma. His resistance to authority makes him unpredictable but potentially innovative. Requires firm guidance to channel his energy productively. Avery demonstrates all the qualities necessary for future CEO. Her ambition, strategic thinking, and ability to command respect make her the natural successor. Focus development accordingly. Reading these clinical assessments of children, of Clara's own grandchildren, Nora felt a renewed determination to give them something their grandmother never had, the freedom to discover their own paths. We all deserve the chance to write our own stories. Clara had scripted her grandchildren's lives down to the smallest detail. Now Nora would give them blank pages instead, and the courage to fill them. There was also a separate envelope containing legal documents, the deed to the apartment, access to trust funds established for each child's education and maintenance, and a letter authorizing Nora to act as their guardian in all matters. Clara had thought of everything. The only thing she hadn't provided was instructions for dealing with Rowan Blake. That meeting was scheduled for later that morning at Blake Industries. Nora dressed carefully in a tailored suit, armor for the confrontation ahead. The children were at school, which was for the best. This conversation needed to happen without their presence. Rowan Blake's office, formerly Clara's, had been completely redesigned. Gone were the austere, minimalist furnishings, replaced with warm woods and rich leathers. Family photos adorned the credenza behind his desk. Rowan with a beautiful woman who must have been the children's mother. Rowan receiving awards. Rowan shaking hands with world leaders. Conspicuously absent were any photos of the quadruplets. He rose when Nora entered, his expression guarded. "Ms. Ellis, thank you for coming." "Mr. Blake?" She took the offered seat, studying him more carefully than she had during their brief first meeting. He had Clara's eyes and commanding presence, but there was something softer in his features, something that reminded her of the photos she'd seen of the children's mother. "I understand you've met my children," he began, sitting back down. "Yes, they're remarkable." "They are." A flicker of genuine pride crossed his face. "My mother made sure of that." "At what cost?" Nora asked quietly. Rowan's expression hardened. "You didn't know my mother as well as you think you did, Miss Ellis. She was..." complicated. I'm beginning to realize that. Nora leaned forward. Mr. Blake, I need to understand your relationship with your children. They believe you don't want them. What they believe and what's true aren't always the same thing. He stood, moving to the window. My mother took them from me when they were infants. Legally, officially, permanently. I was allowed supervised visits twice a year. Any attempt to challenge her was met with threats to cut me off completely, from them and from Blake Industries. You could have fought her. He turned, his expression bitter. Could I? Clara win against a 19-year-old college student with no resources of his own? She would have destroyed me, and then where would the children have been? Appearances can be deceiving. The man Nora had judged as weak and complicit was revealing a different story, one of impossible choices and painful compromises. How many of us have judged others without knowing the full context of their decisions? Nora considered this. So you compromised. Access to your children in exchange for compliance with her plans for Blake Industries? I did what I had to do to stay in their lives at all. He returned to his desk. And now she's given them to you. A stranger. Not a stranger to her, Nora pointed out. She knew me, trusted me in her way. Because you walked away from everything she valued, Rowan said, with surprising insight. You were the one person who ever stood up to her and didn't back down. And you think that's why she chose me? Because I defied her? I think my mother was playing chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. He sighed, suddenly looking tired. What are your intentions, Ms. Ellis, for my children? The directness of the question caught her off guard. To give them what Clara couldn't. The freedom to discover who they are beyond the Wynn legacy. And if who they are is exactly what my mother believed, if Avery truly is meant to run Blake Industries someday, then she'll do so because she's chosen it, not because it was chosen for her. Rowan studied her, his expression unreadable. You know nothing about raising children. Neither did you when they were born, Nora countered. Neither did Clara when she took them. We all learn as we go. And if you fail? If this experiment in freedom goes wrong? Then I'll adjust. Adapt. That's what good parents do, isn't it? Something shifted in Rowan's expression. Respect, perhaps, or simply resignation. The will gives you primary guardianship until they turn 18. That's 4 years. I retain visitation rights and input on decisions related to Blake Industries. I'm not contesting that, Nora assured him. In fact, I'd like to expand your visitation. The children need their father. Surprise flickered across his face. My mother's restrictions no longer apply? No. They need to know you, Rowan. The real you, not the version Clara presented to them? He was silent for a long moment. And what if the real me disappoints them? What if I'm not the father they need? The vulnerability in the question revealed more about Rowan Blake than perhaps he intended. This wasn't just Clara's son, the CEO of Blake Industries. This was a man who had lost his children before he ever really had them, who had been deemed inadequate by his own mother. Then you learn, Nora said gently. You grow. You become the father they need. Rowan nodded slowly. My mother would hate this arrangement. Maybe, Nora acknowledged. Or maybe this is exactly what she intended all along. We often underestimate the capacity for change in those around us, and in ourselves. Rowan Blake wasn't the villain in this story, just as Clara wasn't entirely the hero. They were complex people who had made difficult choices, some right, some wrong. The question now was whether they could all move forward together. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Nora arranged for her most essential belongings to be shipped from Portland, set up a temporary office in Clara's study, and began the process of establishing an East Coast branch of her firm. Ava agreed to manage the Portland office while Nora focused on New York clients and, more importantly, on the 4 teenagers now in her care. Getting to know each of them individually became her priority. They were so different beneath their Wynn exteriors. Jordan, the cellist, was the easiest to connect with. Quiet and thoughtful, he responded to Nora's genuine interest in his music with cautious openness. When she attended his recital, sitting in the front row, applauding enthusiastically, His smile afterward was like the sun breaking through clouds. "No one's ever come just for me before," he admitted as they walked home afterward. "Grandmother always sent a car with Mrs. Bennett. She was too busy." "I'm not too busy," Nora assured him. "Not for this." Riley remained reserved but began seeking Nora out in small ways, bringing her tea in the evenings, asking her opinion on books, sitting quietly in the study while Nora worked. One evening, she appeared with a chess set. "Would you like to play?" she asked hesitantly. "I usually played with grandmother, but—" Nora cleared her desk immediately. "I'd love to, but I should warn you, I'm not very good." Riley's smile was small but genuine. "That's okay. I can teach you." Connection happens in these small, quiet moments. A shared game, an attended recital, a cup of tea offered without being asked. These children were starved not for material things, but for presence. For someone who saw them as more than future executives. Casey's anger gradually gave way to wary acceptance as he realized Nora meant what she said about exploring possibilities beyond Blake Industries. When she arranged for him to attend a summer journalism workshop at Columbia University, his suspicion turned to cautious excitement. "Why journalism?" she asked as they toured the campus together. Casey shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "I like asking questions, finding the truth behind the official story." "Your grandmother wouldn't approve," Nora noted. "No," Casey agreed, a smile tugging at his lips. "She definitely wouldn't." "All the more reason to explore it," Nora said, and was rewarded with the first real laugh she'd heard from him. Avery remained the most resistant, clinging to Clara's vision for her future with fierce determination. She continued her internship at Blake Industries, came home late discussing strategy and market projections, and regarded Nora's efforts with thinly veiled skepticism. "I don't need to find myself," she declared when Nora suggested she might want to explore other interests. "I know exactly who I am and what I'm meant to do." "And what if Blake Industries disappeared tomorrow?" Nora challenged. "What would be left of Avery Blake?" The question clearly unsettled the girl, though she tried not to show it. "That's a ridiculous hypothetical." "Is it? Companies fail, priorities change. The person you are should be defined by more than your professional ambitions." "That's easy for you to say," Avery shot back. "You walked away from success. Some of us actually value achievement." "I walked away from one definition of success toward another," Nora corrected gently. "I'm not suggesting you abandon your ambitions, Avery. I'm suggesting you broaden them." The conversation ended in a stalemate, but Nora noticed Avery watching her siblings' transformations with growing curiosity. When Jordan joined a rock band in addition to his classical training, when Riley began volunteering at a community chess program for underprivileged children, when Casey's first article was published in the school newspaper, Avery observed it all with a mixture of disapproval and something that looked almost like envy. Sometimes the most resistant people are the ones who need change the most. Avery had built her entire identity around being Clara's chosen successor. The idea of being something else, something more, was both terrifying and tantalizing. Rowan's relationship with the children evolved more slowly. The first dinner together was awkward, filled with stilted conversation and long silences. But Nora persisted, arranging individual outings for Rowan with each child, encouraging him to share stories about their mother, about his own childhood. "She was brilliant," he told them one evening, showing photos of the woman they had never known. "Creative, passionate, stubborn. You all have pieces of her in you. Jordan, your musical talent comes from her. Riley, your quiet intensity. Casey, your questioning nature. Avery, your determination." "Why didn't you fight for us?" Casey asked bluntly. The question they had all wanted to ask. Rowan's face reflected years of regret. "I did, in the only ways I could. Your grandmother was formidable. I was young, unprepared. By the time I was in a position to truly challenge her, you had been with her for years. I feared disrupting your lives even more." "So you chose Blake Industries over us," Avery accused. "No," Rowan said firmly. "I chose what I believed would cause you the least pain. I was wrong. I see that now. But I never stopped wanting to be your father." It wasn't an instant reconciliation, but It was a beginning. The children began to see their father as a complex human being rather than the distant figure Clara had presented to them. And Rowan, freed from Clara's restrictions, began to discover what it meant to be a parent rather than just a visitor in his children's lives. Healing rarely happens in dramatic moments. It comes in quiet conversations, in small revelations, in the gradual rebuilding of trust. The Blake family was taking its first tentative steps toward becoming whole, not perfect, but authentic. 3 months after Nora's arrival in New York, the transformation in the Blake household was remarkable. The formal dinners had given way to casual family meals, often cooked together in the kitchen that had rarely been used during Clara's reign. The children's schedules, once rigidly structured around achievement and advancement, now included time for friends, for exploration, for simply being teenagers. Even Avery had begun to unbend slightly, joining her siblings for movie nights and weekend outings. She still interned at Blake Industries, still spoke of becoming CEO someday, but there was a new thoughtfulness to her ambition, a questioning that hadn't existed before. One evening, Nora found her in Clara's study, looking through old photographs. "She never took time off," Avery said without preamble. "Not once in all the years we lived with her. Blake Industries always came first." Nora sat beside her, looking at the photo of a younger Clara at a board meeting. "That was her choice." "Was she happy?" Avery asked suddenly. "Did you ever see her happy?" Nora considered the question carefully. "I saw her satisfied, triumphant, proud. But truly happy? I'm not sure she knew how to be." "I don't want that," Avery admitted, so quietly Nora almost didn't hear her. "I want Blake Industries. I want to lead it someday, but I don't want to be alone." "You don't have to be," Nora assured her. "Success and connection aren't mutually exclusive. You can have both." "How?" "By remembering what matters most. By building a life, not just a career." Avery nodded slowly. "Will you help me figure out how to do that?" The question, vulnerable, genuine, was the breakthrough Nora had been hoping for. "Of course I will. That's why I'm here." Breakthroughs often come when we least expect them. Avery's question wasn't just about her future. It was about her fear. The fear of becoming like Clara. Successful, but isolated. Powerful, but alone. What good is achievement if there's no one to share it with? As summer turned to fall, Nora's temporary arrangement began to feel increasingly permanent. The East Coast office of her firm was thriving, with several significant projects underway. The apartment that had once felt like a museum now felt like a home, filled with the sounds of teenagers living their lives, music and laughter and occasional arguments. And somewhere along the way, these 4 remarkable children had become hers in all the ways that mattered. Not replacing their parents, but adding another layer of love and guidance to their lives. The final piece fell into place on a crisp October evening, when Rowan invited Nora to dinner, just the two of them. "I want to thank you," he said, as they sat in a quiet corner of an elegant restaurant, "for what you've done for my children, for giving them what neither my mother nor I could." "They're extraordinary kids," Nora replied. "They just needed the space to discover who they are." "And who they are is pretty amazing," Rowan smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "Jordan is talking about Juilliard now, did you know? Not abandoning Blake Industries entirely, but focusing on music first." "He mentioned it," Nora acknowledged. "He has the talent." "And Riley is developing that chess program for underserved schools. Casey's journalism teacher says he has real potential. Even Avery is talking about taking a gap year before college to travel." "They're finding their own paths," Nora said. "That's all I wanted for them." Rowan studied her across the table. "And what about you, Nora? What path are you on now?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm not sure. When I came to New York, I thought it would be temporary. Now you can't imagine leaving them," Rowan finished for her. "I see how they look at you, how they turn to you first with their news, their questions, their concerns. You've become their mother in all but name." "I'm not trying to replace their mother," Nora said quickly, "or erase your role in their lives. I know that." He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "That's what makes you so remarkable. You've created space for all of us, for their memories of their mother, for my relationship with them, for Clara's legacy, and for your own unique bond with each of them." Nora felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine they were drinking. "They make it easy to love them." "Not everyone would see it that way," Rowan said wryly. "Four grieving, confused teenagers with trust issues and a complicated family history? Most people would run screaming." "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed, his eyes warm. "You're definitely not." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Nora had been so focused on the children that she had barely noticed how her relationship with Rowan had evolved, from adversaries to co-parents to something that felt increasingly like friendship, and perhaps something more. "My mother was right about one thing," Rowan said softly. "You were exactly who they needed. Who we all needed." Sometimes the most unexpected connections form in the midst of chaos. Nora and Rowan had begun as reluctant co-guardians, thrust together by Clara's final manipulation. Now they were finding common ground, mutual respect, and perhaps the beginnings of something deeper. Later that night, as Nora walked through the quiet apartment checking on sleeping teenagers, she reflected on how completely her life had changed in just a few months. From her solitary existence in Portland to this bustling, complicated, wonderful family in New York. From professional success to personal fulfillment, she hadn't known she was missing. Clara Wynne had given her one final assignment, the most important one of all. And against all odds, Nora was succeeding. In the study that had once been Clara's domain, now transformed into a warm, welcoming space where the family gathered each evening, Nora found herself looking at the portrait of her former mentor that still hung on the wall. "I hope this is what you wanted," she said softly to the imperious face. "They're finding their way, not your way, but theirs. And it's beautiful to watch." She could almost imagine Clara's response. Not approval exactly, but acknowledgement. A nod of that regal head. A recognition that sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you build, but who you become, and who you help others become along the way. Clara Wynne had built an empire. But Nora Ellis was building something even more valuable. A family. Not bound by obligation or expectation, but by choice, by love, by the freedom to become their best selves together. It wasn't the life she had planned. But standing there, surrounded by the evidence of 4 teenagers finding their paths, and one father reclaiming his role, Nora knew it was exactly the life she was meant to have. The legacy Clara Wynne had truly intended all along. We all have moments when life takes an unexpected turn. When the path we thought we were on suddenly forks in a direction we never anticipated. Nora's journey from reluctant guardian to the heart of this unconventional family reminds us that sometimes our greatest purpose finds us when we're not looking for it. 5 years had passed since the day Nora Ellis took a bullet in the executive suite of Blake Industries. 5 years of healing, growth, and transformation, not just for her, but for the entire Blake family. The penthouse that had once been Clara Wynne's austere showcase was now unrecognizable. Colorful artwork covered walls that had once displayed only carefully curated pieces. Comfortable furniture invited people to linger rather than perch uncomfortably. Photos chronicled birthdays, graduations, holidays, the milestones of a real family. Nora stood in the kitchen reviewing architectural plans for her firm's newest project, a community center in Brooklyn inspired by the chess program Riley had developed. At 43, Nora had found her stride both professionally and personally. Her East Coast office had flourished, specializing in sustainable community spaces that brought people together. "Is that coffee I smell?" Riley padded into the kitchen, her hair pulled into a messy bun, still in her pajamas despite the late morning hour. At 20, she was home from Stanford for summer break. Her quiet intensity now balanced with a dry wit that emerged when she was comfortable. "Fresh pot," Nora confirmed, pushing a mug toward her. "Late night?" "Video call with my research team in Singapore," Riley explained, doctoring her coffee with cream. "Time zones are brutal." Riley's chess program had expanded internationally, becoming the foundation for her undergraduate research on cognitive development in children from disadvantaged backgrounds. The shy 14-year-old who had once believed happiness was irrelevant had blossomed into a passionate advocate for educational equity. "Where is everyone?" Riley asked, glancing around the unusually quiet apartment. "Avery's at the office, board meeting today. Casey's at the newspaper, Jordan's at rehearsal." Nora hesitated, then added casually, "And I need to leave in about an hour to pick up your father." Riley's eyes widened. "That's today? I lost track." 4 years, 3 months, and 17 days, Nora confirmed. "Good behavior. 5 years can change everything." The children who had once been Clara's carefully programmed heirs were now young adults pursuing their authentic passions. And Rowan Blake was coming home after serving his sentence, a different man than the one who had once held a gun in desperation. Rowan Blake was coming home. After serving his reduced sentence for financial fraud, he was being released, not to the corporate penthouse he had once occupied, but to the guest house behind Nora's recently purchased brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. "Are you nervous?" Riley asked, studying Nora over the rim of her coffee mug. "A little," Nora admitted. "It's been a long time. He's missed so much. But we've kept him involved. The visits, the letters, the calls." Riley set down her mug. "And he's changed. We all have." That was undeniably true. The weekly visits to the minimum security facility where Rowan had served his time had evolved from awkward to meaningful. The man who emerged was not the same one who had entered. The corporate mask had fallen away, revealing someone more authentic, more vulnerable, more human. "I just want this transition to go smoothly," Nora said. "For all of you." "It will," Riley squeezed her hand. "Because of you." The drive to the correctional facility was familiar. Nora had made it countless times over the years, but today felt different. Today, Rowan would be leaving with her. He was waiting in the processing area, a small duffel bag containing his few possessions at his feet. At 43, his dark hair was now threaded with silver at the temples, lines etched more deeply around his eyes. But when he saw Nora, his smile was genuine, transforming his face. "You came," he said simply. "I promised I would." She embraced him briefly, feeling the tension in his shoulders. "Ready to go home?" Rowan hesitated. "Is it home, really?" "It can be," Nora replied, "if you want it to be." Sometimes the most profound journeys are internal. Rowan Blake had lost everything: his freedom, his corporate identity, his carefully constructed facade. In that loss, he had found something more valuable: his authentic self. The question now was whether he could build a new life from the ashes of the old. The drive back to the city was quiet at first, Rowan staring out the window at the world that had continued without him. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what to say to them. The kids. What words could possibly be enough after everything that's happened?" "They don't need perfect words," Nora assured him. "They just need their father. I've missed so much. Casey's graduation, Jordan's first major performance, Avery taking over the foundation, Riley's research breakthrough." "But you were part of it all," Nora reminded him. "You read every paper Casey wrote. You listened to recordings of all Jordan's concerts. You advised Avery on the foundation's structure. You've discussed Riley's research methodology with her for hours. Through bulletproof glass, on monitored phone calls. Still counts." Nora glanced at him. "They know you care, that you're proud of them. That's what matters." Rowan was silent for a moment. "And what about you, Nora? After everything I put you through, the gun, the bullet, raising my children while I was incarcerated, how can I ever repay that?" "It was never about repayment," she said simply. "It was about family." The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights was a far cry from the Manhattan penthouse where their journey had begun. Warm, inviting, with a garden in the back and a separate guest house that would be Rowan's new home. A fresh start, away from the shadows of Blake Industries and Clara's legacy. "The kids wanted to be here when you arrived," Nora explained as she showed him around the guest house. "But I thought you might want some time to settle in first. They'll be coming for dinner." "All of them?" Rowan asked, a note of anxiety in his voice. "All 4, Nora confirmed. "They've been planning this day for weeks." Left alone to unpack and rest, Rowan found himself drawn to the window overlooking the main house. Through it, he could see Nora moving about the kitchen, preparing for dinner. The woman who had saved his life in more ways than one, who had raised his children with love and wisdom, who had visited him faithfully for 4 years, keeping him connected to the family he might otherwise have lost completely. He had fallen in love with her somewhere along the way. Not the desperate, clinging love of a drowning man, but something deeper, more genuine, based on respect, on gratitude, on shared purpose. He had never spoken of it. How could he? From behind prison walls. But now, watching her through the window, he wondered if perhaps there might be a chance for something more between them. If he hadn't destroyed that possibility the night he pointed a gun at her. Love often grows in the most unlikely circumstances. For Rowan and Nora, it had taken root in weekly prison visits, in co-parenting from a distance, in rebuilding a family that had been shattered by secrets and control. The question wasn't whether the feeling was real, but whether they would have the courage to acknowledge it. The sound of car doors slamming pulled him from his thoughts. Through the window, he saw them arriving. His children, no longer teenagers but young adults. Casey, tall and confident at 21, now a journalism major at Columbia. Jordan, his cello case slung over his shoulder, his posture relaxed in a way it had never been under Clara's regime. Avery, dressed in a business suit but with hiking boots instead of heels, her corporate polish now balanced with authentic passion. And Riley, the youngest by minutes but often the wisest, observing everything with those penetrating gray eyes. They embraced Nora in the driveway, a tangle of arms and laughter that made Rowan's heart ache with longing. This was what he had nearly destroyed with his desperation 5 years ago. What Nora had saved by stepping in front of that gun. Taking a deep breath, he stepped outside to meet his family. The reunion was everything Nora had hoped for and more. Initial awkwardness quickly gave way to genuine connection as they gathered around the dining table. The children, though they could hardly be called that anymore, had prepared for this moment, each finding their own way to bridge the gap between past and present. Casey brought copies of his award-winning articles, including the investigative series on prison reform that had been inspired by his visits to see Rowan. Jordan played a piece he had composed specifically for this day, the music expressing what words could not. Riley shared her latest research findings, her methodical mind finding comfort in academic discussion. And Avery presented Rowan with a proposal for his future role in the Blake Foundation, the organization she had created from the ashes of Blake Industries scandal. "We've restructured completely," she explained, her confidence tempered with humility that would have been unthinkable in the 14-year-old Nora had first met. "The foundation focuses on ethical business practices, corporate accountability, and supporting communities harmed by corporate malfeasance. Using the Blake fortune to undo Blake damage," Rowan observed. "Exactly." Avery met his gaze steadily. "Grandmother would hate it." "Your grandmother," Rowan said carefully, "might have understood better than we think, in the end." The conversation flowed naturally, years of weekly visits having laid the groundwork for this reunion. They talked about the past without flinching from it, about the present with joy, about the future with hope. And through it all, Nora watched, her heart full, as the family she had helped build found its footing in this new chapter. Later, as the younger generation cleared the dishes, insisting that Nora and Rowan relax on the patio, Rowan turned to her, his expression serious. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything. For saving my life that night, for raising my children, for keeping me connected to them, for—" He gestured around them. "For creating this. A real family." "We created it together," Nora corrected gently. "All of us. But you were the catalyst, the one who showed us what was possible." He hesitated, then added, "I've had a lot of time to think these past 4 years, about what matters, about what I want for the future." "And what is that?" Nora asked, her heart beating a little faster. Before Rowan could answer, Casey appeared at the patio door. "Dad, we were thinking of watching that documentary series you recommended, the one about architectural innovations, if you're not too tired." The question, so normal, so familial, brought a smile to Rowan's face. I'd like that. The moment between them passed, but Nora felt its echo throughout the evening as they gathered in the living room, the six of them finding places on couches and floor cushions. This was what family looked like. Not the rigid, performance-based unit Clara had created, but something organic, flexible, built on love rather than expectation. As the documentary played, Nora found herself watching them instead of the screen. Casey and Jordan arguing good-naturedly about camera techniques. Riley curled up with a notebook, jotting down ideas sparked by the film. Avery and Rowan deep in conversation about sustainable business models. And in that moment, Nora knew with absolute certainty that taking that bullet had been worth it. That every sacrifice, every difficult moment, every challenge they had faced together had led to this. A family bound not by obligation or legacy, but by choice, by love, by the freedom to become their best selves together. The legacy Clara Wynne had truly intended all along. Sometimes the most beautiful moments aren't dramatic or extraordinary. They're the quiet evenings spent together, the casual conversations, the simple joy of belonging. This family had weathered storms that would have destroyed most and emerged stronger, more authentic, more connected. The weeks following Rowan's release established a new rhythm for their unconventional family. He settled into the guest house, finding his footing in a world that had changed significantly during his incarceration. The Blake name, once synonymous with corporate power, now carried different associations, some negative due to the scandal, but increasingly positive thanks to the foundation Avery had built. Nora watched his adjustment with a careful eye, ready to offer support, but conscious of giving him space to rebuild his relationship with his children on his own terms. They had all grown and changed during his absence, no longer the teenagers Clara had programmed, but young adults forging their own paths. Casey, now in his final year at Columbia's journalism school, had developed a powerful voice advocating for criminal justice reform. His experiences visiting his father had shaped his perspective, giving him insight few of his peers possessed. He and Rowan had formed a bond based on intellectual debate and shared values that would have been impossible under Clara's regime. Jordan had flourished at Juilliard, his musical talent expanding beyond classical training to experimental composition. He had found his voice, literally and figuratively, forming a band that blended classical elements with contemporary sounds. His relationship with Rowan was quieter but no less meaningful, built on shared appreciation for creativity and expression. Riley, the most academically inclined of the quadruplets, had turned her analytical mind to psychology and educational theory. Her chess program had become the foundation for groundbreaking research on cognitive development in underserved communities. She and Rowan connected through intellectual discussion, their conversations ranging from philosophy to neuroscience. And Avery, once Clara's chosen successor, had perhaps changed the most. Still driven and ambitious, she had channeled those qualities into transforming Blake Industries' tainted legacy into something positive. The Blake Foundation, under her leadership, had become a force for corporate accountability and ethical business practices. She and Rowan worked closely together, his experience providing valuable insight for her vision. Our greatest strengths often emerge from our deepest wounds. Each of the Blake quadruplets had taken what could have been a traumatic legacy and transformed it into purpose. They weren't running from their past. They were redefining it. One evening, as Nora worked late in her home office, a soft knock at the door interrupted her concentration. Rowan stood in the doorway, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses in his hands. "I thought you might need a break," he said. "You've been working for hours." Nora smiled, stretching her stiff shoulders. "I lost track of time. Come in." He poured the wine, settling into the chair across from her desk. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the ease of long acquaintance between them. "The kids seem happy," Rowan observed. "Balanced. Whole." "They are," Nora agreed. "They've found their own ways forward." "Because of you." His eyes met hers, sincere and direct. "You gave them what Clara and I couldn't, the freedom to become themselves." "They would have found their way eventually," Nora demurred. "They're remarkable people." "Yes, but who knows how much damage might have been done first." Rowan swirled the wine in his glass, thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately. About what we leave behind? Natural, given everything that's happened. My mother was obsessed with legacy, with building something that would outlast her. Blake Industries was supposed to be that legacy, passed down through generations. He shook his head. But in the end, her true legacy isn't the company, it's them. Casey, Jordan, Riley, Avery, and what they're becoming has very little to do with what she planned. I think Clara understood that, at the end, Nora said quietly. Why else would she have chosen me as their guardian? Someone she knew would encourage them to find their own paths. Rowan considered this. Perhaps. Or perhaps she was still playing chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. What do you mean? I mean, what if this was her plan all along? Not Blake Industries specifically, but creating a generation that would redefine the Blake legacy on their own terms? What if she knew the company was tainted, that the financial schemes would eventually come to light? What if choosing you was her way of ensuring the children would have someone to guide them through the aftermath? The idea was startling, but not entirely implausible. Clara Wynne had always been several steps ahead of everyone else. If that's true, Nora said slowly, then she was even more remarkable than I thought. And more manipulative, Rowan added with a wry smile. But either way, the result is the same. 4 extraordinary young people defining success on their own terms. And you, Nora, you're part of her legacy too. Me? The woman who walked away. The one person who stood up to Clara Wynne and didn't back down. The one she trusted with her most precious possessions. Rowan set down his glass, his expression serious. The woman I've fallen in love with. The words hung in the air between them. Unexpected, yet somehow inevitable. Nora felt her heart race, emotions she had carefully contained for years suddenly breaking free. Rowan. You don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I know it's complicated. Our history, the children, everything that's happened. I just needed you to know. After 4 years of thinking about what matters, what I truly want, it's you, Nora. It's this family we've built together. Sometimes the most profound truths emerge in the quietest moments. Rowan's confession wasn't just about romantic feelings. It was about recognizing what truly mattered. About the family they had created together, against all odds. Nora was silent for a long moment, sorting through her feelings. The attraction had always been there, simmering beneath the surface of their co-parenting relationship. But there had been so many barriers: his incarceration, her responsibility to the children, the complicated history between them. I don't know what to say, she admitted finally. You don't have to say anything now, Rowan assured her. I've waited 4 years. I can wait longer if necessary. He stood, his smile gentle. Just think about it. After he left, Nora sat alone in her office, mind whirling. Could they build something real together, after everything that had happened? Was there a future for them beyond co-parenting the now-adult quadruplets? And what would Clara Wynne think of this final twist in her carefully orchestrated plan? The Blake Foundation Gala was the social event of the season, bringing together New York's elite for a night of philanthropy and networking. Under Avery's leadership, the foundation had transformed from a damage control effort into a respected organization dedicated to corporate ethics and community investment. Nora stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching with pride as Avery commanded the stage, her poise and passion evident as she outlined the foundation's achievements and future goals. At 21, she had the presence of someone twice her age, but without the cold calculation that had characterized Clara Wynne. Instead, Avery's strength was tempered with genuine compassion, a quality Clara had considered weakness but that Nora knew was Avery's greatest asset. She's remarkable, Rowan said, appearing at Nora's side. In his tuxedo, with silver threading his dark hair, he cut an impressive figure, no longer the desperate man who had held a gun in a Blake Industries executive suite, but someone who had found his own kind of redemption. She is, Nora agreed. They all are. Across the room, Casey was deep in conversation with the Attorney General, likely discussing the criminal justice reform initiative the foundation had recently launched. Jordan, who had composed an original piece for the event, stood with a group of musicians, his confidence evident in his relaxed posture. and Riley moved through the crowd with quiet purpose, connecting donors with program directors, her analytical mind finding perfect matches between resources and needs. "We did good," Rowan said softly, "despite everything." "They did good," Nora corrected. "We just gave them the space to become themselves." The month since Rowan's confession of love had passed in a strange limbo. Neither had mentioned it again, continuing their co-parenting relationship with careful politeness. But Nora had felt the shift between them. The lingering glances, the careful distance, the unspoken possibility hanging in the air. "Nora," Rowan began, his voice low. "About what I said?" "Ladies and gentlemen," Avery's voice cut through the crowd, "it is my great honor to present this year's Blake Foundation Ethical Leadership Award. This award recognizes an individual who has demonstrated exceptional commitment to corporate responsibility, community investment, and ethical business practices." The crowd quieted, attention turning to the stage. This year's recipient has shown us that true leadership isn't about power or profit, but about purpose, about using one's influence to create positive change, about having the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Avery's gaze found Nora in the crowd. About being willing to sacrifice for others. Nora felt a flutter of unease. Surely Avery wasn't. "Please join me in honoring this year's recipient, Nora Ellis." The room erupted in applause. Nora stood frozen, shock rendering her momentarily immobile. Rowan gently nudged her forward, his smile encouraging. "Go on. You deserve this." In a daze, Nora made her way to the stage, accepting Avery's embrace and the crystal award she presented. "I don't understand," Nora whispered. "I'm not a business leader." "You're exactly the kind of leader we want to celebrate," Avery replied, guiding her to the microphone. Facing the crowd of New York's most powerful individuals, Nora felt distinctly out of place. Her work as an architect had always been about creating spaces for community, not accumulating power or influence. What could she possibly say to these people? But then she saw them, Casey, Jordan, Riley, and Avery, watching her with pride and love, and beside them Rowan, his expression a mixture of admiration and something deeper, more personal. Her family, the one she had never expected to have. "Thank you for this honor," Nora began, finding her voice. "Though I must confess, I don't see myself as a business leader or corporate influencer. My work has always been about creating spaces where people can connect, where communities can thrive." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 6 years ago, I was asked to take on a responsibility I never expected, guardianship of 4 remarkable teenagers I had never met. At the time, it seemed impossible. But what I discovered was that sometimes, the most significant lives are the ones we never planned. Her gaze found each of the quadruplets in turn. "Casey, Jordan, Riley, Avery. You taught me that legacy isn't about buildings or companies or even achievements. It's about the lives we touch, the people we help become their best selves. It's about creating spaces, literal and figurative, where others can flourish." She turned slightly, including Rowan in her gaze. "And sometimes it's about second chances, about forgiveness, about finding family in unexpected places." The room was silent, captivated by the genuine emotion in her voice. The Blake Foundation stands for ethical leadership, for corporate responsibility. But at its heart, it's about something simpler and more profound, the recognition that we are all connected, that our choices affect others. That true success isn't measured in profit margins or market share, but in positive impact. She held up the award, crystal catching the light. "I accept this honor on behalf of everyone who has ever had the courage to choose a different path, to define success on their own terms, to build something meaningful, even when it wasn't what they originally planned." The applause was thunderous as she left the stage, immediately enveloped in a group hug by the quadruplets. "That was perfect," Casey said, his journalistic appreciation for powerful words evident. "You didn't tell me about this," Nora accused them gently. "We wanted it to be a surprise," Riley explained. "The board voted unanimously," Avery added. "It wasn't just us." "Though we might have nominated you," Jordan admitted with a grin. As the evening continued, Nora found herself approached by countless attendees, all eager to congratulate her or discuss the foundation's work. It was nearly midnight before she found a moment alone, stepping onto a balcony for a breath of fresh air. The door opened behind her, and Rowan joined her, offering a glass of champagne. "To the woman of the hour," he said, clinking his glass against hers. "I still can't believe they did that," Nora shook her head, bemused. "I can. You deserve recognition for everything you've done." They stood in companionable silence, looking out over the city lights. "Your speech was beautiful," Rowan said finally, "especially the part about second chances." Nora turned to face him, decision made. "I've been thinking about what you said. About us. And I think I'd like to explore that possibility." She set down her glass, meeting his gaze directly. "But slowly, carefully. There's a lot at stake." Rowan's smile was radiant. "I can do slowly. I can do carefully. I've waited this long. I can wait as long as you need." "The children are adults now," he reminded her gently, "capable of understanding that their parents or parent figures might have feelings for each other. It's complicated. Life usually is." He took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "But some complications are worth navigating." As they stood together on the balcony, the sounds of the gala fading into the background, Nora felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This wasn't the life she had planned when she first received Clara Wynn's letter 6 years ago. It was messier, more complicated, more challenging, and infinitely more meaningful. Love often finds us when we're busy making other plans. For Nora and Rowan, it had grown slowly, through shared purpose and mutual respect. Through the family they had built together. Through second chances neither had expected to find. The following Sunday, the family gathered for their weekly dinner, a tradition that had begun during Rowan's incarceration and continued after his release. These dinners were sacred time, a chance for all 6 of them to reconnect regardless of their busy schedules. Tonight was Nora's turn to cook, and she had prepared her famous lasagna, the dish that had become a family favorite over the years. As she moved around the kitchen, she was aware of Rowan watching her from the doorway, his expression soft. "Need any help?" he offered. "You could set the table," she suggested, handing him a stack of plates. They worked in comfortable tandem, the ease of long acquaintance between them. This was new territory for both of them, not just co-parents now, but 2 people cautiously exploring the possibility of something more. They had agreed to take things slowly, to be thoughtful about how and when to tell the children. But as Casey and Jordan arrived, bringing wine and dessert, as Riley set up the chess set for their after-dinner game, as Avery discussed her latest foundation initiative, Nora found herself wondering if perhaps they already knew. If the glances between her and Rowan, the new warmth in their interactions, had been noticed by these perceptive young adults who had always been too observant for their own good. Dinner was a lively affair, filled with updates on everyone's projects and good-natured teasing. As they lingered over coffee and the chocolate cake Jordan had brought, Casey cleared his throat. "So," he began, a mischievous glint in his eye, "are we going to talk about the fact that Dad has been making hard eyes at Nora all evening? Or are we pretending not to notice?" Nora nearly choked on her coffee. Rowan's face flushed, a rare display of discomposure. "Casey," Riley admonished, though her lips twitched with amusement. "What? We're all adults here, and it's not like it isn't obvious." "We were planning to talk to you," Nora began, setting down her cup. "When the time was right." "About the fact that you 2 are clearly in love with each other?" Avery raised an eyebrow, so reminiscent of Clara that Nora had to suppress a smile. "We've known that for years." "Years?" Rowan echoed, startled. "Dad, you talked about her constantly during visits," Jordan pointed out. "And Nora, you've kept every letter he ever sent you in a box in your desk drawer." "How did you?" Nora began, then shook her head. "Never mind, I don't want to know." "So it's official?" Riley asked, her analytical mind seeking clarity. "You 2 are together?" Nora and Rowan exchanged glances. "We're exploring that possibility," Rowan said carefully, "taking things slowly." "Because of us?" Casey guessed. "You're worried about how we'll react?" Partly, Nora admitted. This family has been through so much. We didn't want to complicate things further if it didn't work out, Avery finished for her. That's thoughtful but unnecessary. We're not children anymore. We can handle complexity. And honestly, Jordan added, after everything we've been through together, this seems like the least complicated development possible. Nora felt a weight lift from her shoulders. So you're all okay with this? The quadruplets exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. More than okay, Riley said, speaking for all of them. We want you both to be happy, and it's obvious that you make each other happy. Besides, Casey added with a grin, it saves us the trouble of finding +1s for family events. Very efficient. Sometimes the things we worry about most turn out to be the easiest to resolve. Nora and Rowan had agonized over how to tell the children about their relationship, only to discover they had known all along, and approved. How many of our fears dissolve when finally brought into the light? The tension broken, they all laughed, the conversation flowing naturally into other topics. But Nora noticed the subtle changes, the way the children included both her and Rowan in future plans, the casual references to your parents, rather than separating them into distinct roles, the knowing smiles when Rowan's hand found hers under the table. They had given their blessing in their own way, not with grand declarations, but with simple acceptance, with the recognition that this new development was not a disruption, but a natural evolution of the family they had built together. Later, after the children had departed and they were cleaning up the kitchen, Rowan pulled Nora into a gentle embrace. That went better than expected, he murmured against her hair. They're remarkable people, Nora replied. We're lucky. Yes, we are. He pulled back slightly to meet her gaze. So, Ms. Ellis, now that we have our children's approval, would you do me the honor of going on an actual date with me? Dinner, perhaps? Or a movie? Nora laughed. That sounds suspiciously normal for us. I thought we might try normal for a change, just to see how it feels. Normal sounds perfect, she agreed, leaning up to kiss him softly. As they stood in the kitchen of the home they had created together, surrounded by the evidence of the family they had built, Nora marveled at the strange, winding path that had led them here, from adversaries to co-parents to partners in every sense. It wasn't the life she had planned when she first received Clara Wynn's letter. It was better, richer, more meaningful than she could have imagined. The legacy Clara Wynn had truly intended all along. Life rarely follows a straight line. It curves and doubles back, takes unexpected detours, and sometimes leads us to destinations we never imagined. For Nora and Rowan, that journey had brought them here, to a love that had grown from shared purpose and mutual respect. 1 year later, the brownstone garden was transformed for a celebration. Twinkling lights hung from trees, tables adorned with flowers, champagne chilling in silver buckets. The occasion, Nora and Rowan's wedding, a small, intimate gathering of family and close friends. At 45, Nora had never imagined herself as a bride. Her life had been focused on her career, then on raising 4 teenagers who had unexpectedly become hers. Romance had seemed a distant possibility, especially with the complicated history between her and Rowan. But life, she had learned, rarely followed expected paths. Sometimes the most beautiful journeys were the ones you never planned. In the guest bedroom that had become an impromptu bridal suite, Avery adjusted the simple wreath of flowers in Nora's hair. At 22, she had grown into a poised young woman, her ambition now tempered with compassion, her drive directed toward positive change. Perfect, she declared, stepping back to admire her handiwork. Simple, but elegant, just like you. Riley, arranging the folds of Nora's ivory dress, smiled in agreement. Dad's going to be speechless. Is he nervous? Nora asked, unable to suppress her own butterflies. Terrified, Casey confirmed, poking his head into the room. Jordan is trying to calm him down with breathing exercises. Tell him that makes 2 of us, Nora admitted. Nervous about marrying Dad? Avery asked, surprised. After everything you've been through together? Not about marrying him, Nora clarified. About the ceremony. All those people watching. All those people being our closest friends and family, Riley reminded her, who love you both and are thrilled to see you happy. Besides, Casey added with a grin, if you could face down a gun for him, walking down an aisle should be easy. The reference to that fateful night, once a painful memory, had become something of a family joke over time. A shorthand for the lengths they would go to protect each other. Fair point, Nora conceded, smoothing her dress one final time. I think I'm ready. Some moments in life feel like the culmination of everything that came before. For Nora, walking toward Rowan in that garden, surrounded by the family they had built together, was one such moment. Every step, every choice, every challenge had led her here. To this man, these children, this life she had never expected to find. The garden ceremony was everything they had wanted. Simple, meaningful, intimate. Jordan played the cello as Nora walked down the aisle, his music expressing what words could not. Casey stood as Rowan's best man, his journalistic eloquence put to good use in a toast that left not a dry eye in the garden. Riley and Avery, as Nora's attendants, stood witness to the vows that formalized what had been true for years, that Nora and Rowan had chosen each other, chosen this unconventional family, chosen a life built on second chances and redemption. As they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Rowan held Nora close, his voice soft in her ear. Happy? Beyond words, she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. You? More than I ever thought possible. He pulled back slightly to meet her gaze. When I think about where we started, me pointing a gun at you in that office, and now here we are, Nora finished for him. Proof that people can change, that second chances are possible, that love can grow in the most unexpected places. Speaking of unexpected, Rowan said, his expression turning serious, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you, a possibility for our future. Oh? The Blake Foundation has been approached about establishing a community center in Detroit. Similar to the one Riley developed her chess program in, they need an architect with experience in community spaces. Nora raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job at our wedding? I'm offering you a project, Rowan corrected with a smile, one that would allow us to work together, to combine your architectural vision with the foundation's resources, to create something meaningful together. The idea was appealing, a chance to use her skills for community impact on a larger scale than her firm typically handled, and the opportunity to work alongside Rowan, to build something together beyond their family, held its own attraction. I'd like that, she said simply. As the evening progressed, Nora found herself watching the quadruplets, now young adults with lives and careers of their own, yet still connected to each other and to the parents who had guided them through the most turbulent years of their lives. Casey, now a respected journalist whose work on criminal justice reform had earned national recognition. Jordan, whose musical career bridged classical and contemporary worlds, bringing new audiences to both. Riley, whose research on cognitive development was changing educational approaches in underserved communities. And Avery, who had transformed the Blake legacy from corporate dominance to ethical leadership and community investment. They had all found their own paths, just as Nora had hoped when she first became their guardian. Not the paths Clara had planned for them, but ones they had chosen for themselves. Ones that reflected their unique talents and values. As the celebration continued around her, Nora found herself drawn to the small table near the garden entrance, where a single photograph stood in a silver frame. Clara Wynne, imperious and elegant, looking out at the gathering with that inscrutable expression Nora remembered so well. Avery had insisted on including it. She should be here, she had said simply. She's part of this story too. Looking at the photograph now, Nora wondered what Clara would think of this scene. Her son, happy and at peace after years of struggle. Her grandchildren, flourishing in ways she might never have imagined. And Nora herself, once Clara's protege, then her adversary, now the woman who had helped reshape the Blake legacy into something more meaningful than corporate success. Having a moment with grandmother? Riley appeared beside her, following her gaze to the photograph. Just wondering what she would think of all this, Nora admitted. Riley considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. I think she'd be surprised. but not displeased. No? She valued success above all else, Riley explained. And by any measure, she gestured to the gathering, to her siblings, to Rowan and Nora, is a success. Not the kind she planned for, but success nonetheless. A different definition of success, Nora mused. One that includes happiness, Riley agreed. Something she never quite figured out for herself. They stood in companionable silence, both contemplating the woman whose actions had brought them together, whose final decision, to name Nora as guardian, had set in motion everything that followed. Do you think she knew? Nora asked suddenly. When she chose me as your guardian. Do you think she knew how it would all turn out? Riley smiled, a hint of mischief in her usually serious expression. Grandmother always played chess while everyone else played checkers. I wouldn't put it past her to have seen several moves ahead. Even this? Nora gestured to the wedding celebration. Maybe not the specifics, Riley conceded, but the general direction? The transformation of Blake Industries into the foundation. The four of us finding our own paths? You and Dad finding each other? I think she might have hoped for something like this. The idea was startling, but not entirely implausible. Clara Wynne had always been several steps ahead of everyone else. Had her final act, naming Nora as guardian, been her way of ensuring a different kind of legacy? One built on connection rather than control? I hope she found peace, Nora said softly. At the end. I think she did, Riley replied, in her own way. Rowan appeared beside them, his expression softening at the sight of Clara's photograph. Paying respects to my mother? Something like that, Nora acknowledged. She would have had something cutting to say about this whole affair, Rowan said with a wry smile. Too sentimental, not grand enough, insufficient strategic advantage. And yet, Riley pointed out, she's the one who set it all in motion. True enough, Rowan offered his hand to Nora. May I steal my wife for another dance? As they moved to the center of the garden, where Jordan was now playing a piece he had composed specifically for their wedding, Nora felt a sense of completion, of rightness, as if all the broken pieces of their lives had finally found their proper arrangement. What are you thinking? Rowan asked, noticing her expression. That this isn't the life I planned, she replied honestly. When I got that letter from Clara 6 years ago, I never imagined any of this. Regrets? His question was light, but she heard the underlying vulnerability. Not a single one, Nora assured him. Sometimes the most significant lives are the ones we never planned. As the evening drew to a close, the newlyweds stood on the porch of their brownstone, waving goodbye to the last of their guests. The quadruplets had departed together, heading to a favorite late-night cafe to continue their own celebration, a tradition they had established years ago. Alone at last, Rowan murmured, wrapping his arms around Nora from behind. Mrs. Blake. Ellis Blake, she corrected with a smile. I've built a reputation with my own name. Ellis Blake it is, he agreed easily. A new branch of the family tree. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge above the Brooklyn skyline. So different from the Manhattan penthouse where their journey had begun, yet connected to it by the invisible threads of shared history and chosen family. Do you ever wonder, Rowan asked softly, what would have happened if you hadn't taken that bullet? If things had gone differently that night? Nora turned in his arms to face him. Sometimes, but then I remember something a wise woman once told me. Oh, and what was that? That legacy isn't what you build, Nora said, echoing Clara's words from that long-ago letter. It's who you help others become. Rowan's eyes softened with understanding. My mother said that? In her final letter to me, the one I found in her desk that first night. Nora touched his face gently. I think in the end, she understood what truly mattered. And she tried, in her own complicated way, to give it to us all. The freedom to define success on our own terms, Rowan murmured. Exactly. As they turned to enter their home, the home they had built together, not just physically, but emotionally, Nora felt a profound sense of gratitude for Clara's final act of unexpected wisdom, For the 4 remarkable young adults who had become her family. For the man beside her, who had found his way from desperation to redemption. And for the bullet that had changed everything. That had shown them all what truly mattered. What was worth fighting for? Worth living for. The legacy Clara Wynne had truly intended all along. Our loyal storytelling family understands that the most powerful journeys are often the ones we never planned. If you've been moved by Nora and the Blake family's story of redemption, love, and finding family in unexpected places, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. And if you're still watching without subscribing, ask yourself, what stories are you missing by not joining our community? The subscribe button is waiting, just like second chances are waiting for all of us. Let us know in the comments what part of this story resonated most with you, and what journey you hope to hear about next. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most significant lives are the ones we never planned.